Good morning, everybody. Slightly new haircut. I had to go with some thinning shears I borrowed from a friend. It's not the drastic cut that I'm going to go for soon. Just doing it in stages at the minute. Covered. So interesting. The heart of NLP is the process of modeling. And I actually have been modeling or watching, it's not quite the same thing, some training videos on cutting hair on the web. And the principle with modeling is to get several exemplars of the same thing, and to get, what's consistent, what's the kind of common thread with them all. Anyway, the common thread with the ones I watched with my length of hair is to use thinning scissors. And now getting them is the next thing. But this is another story. Anyway, I had to go with some of the thinning scissors. But the heart of NLP is the process of studying the structure of experience, which sounds very technical. I always thought it sounded very technical, but it's a very important definition, because it's a way of studying how we or others do what they do. Now, you can study anything. You could study how somebody has a problem state, for example, if you're coaching them, let's say, and also where their excellence is. So it's designed particularly to study outstanding performance in whatever field you like. And the measure that it works, because often people say to me, does NLP work? Well, the measure that it works is if what you've studied, let's say using the tools of NLP, using the observation tools, if you learn enough about, let's say the way that somebody else does something for the moment, and that you can reproduce it and get the same result, then it's worked. That is what it is. So questions like, sorry, touching my face, but I haven't been anywhere. Questions like, does it work? Well, it's inherent in the process. If it works, you get the same result. So, and what do we model? So many possibilities. And I have done, a lot of models. So, for example, people might model how to, get an audience's attention, for example, if they're doing a presentation, or how to let go of something that has been bothering them, or how to be fully present in a conversation. So many possibilities. And I've done a lot of modeling in sports world as well, particularly in cycling. And it was very relevant yesterday because, and this is a key point for those people who train at the level of master practitioner with me. Part of that, the completion of that training, is the completion of a modeling project. You choose, or those of you who are doing that, you have chosen an area that you wish to learn about and a result that you wish to achieve for yourself. Now, the tendency is for people to try and model very big things like confidence, or management, or charisma, and they're just too big. It's very rare. It's almost unheard of for somebody to start at the level of detail that it's appropriate to start at for modeling. Modeling a moment allows us to study the distinctions in that moment. If you go for a big, vague thing, you're only going to do what traditional people do when they're studying stuff. You'll just get, the behaviors and maybe some of the beliefs. And especially if you talk to somebody who is an exemplar for you, they're going to tell you what they think they do. And that's just a waste of space. Because the idea with NLP is that you're studying, not asking. I mean, you might use asking as part of the process, but the aim is to study what it is that people do. And they're usually oblivious to some of the things that make the difference. So that's talking about modeling other people. Now we can model ourselves. And something happened yesterday, which I thought, oh, yes, what happened then? What did I do then? So I have a turbo trainer, quite a sophisticated, smart turbo trainer set up so that I can cycle, I can do rides using this online app called Swift, which I talked about in the previous video. And it's amazing. You know, you can ride with others, you can ride alone, you can do different routes and so on. And I had ridden with a friend of mine who lives in Cape Town in South Africa. And amazingly, we could do a team ride together. I didn't survive very long, really. I thought it was shorter than it was. And so I stopped part way. And she's been very, very helpful in enabling me to kind of understand all the information on Swift, because there's a lot of data that comes up, and that's really how you develop your ability to ride, is by, you know, analyzing all this data. So it's very specific, very measurable. And so after this not very successful team ride, she suggested that I get my FTP, which is a way of measuring your power, and it's a way of measuring what's a sustainable power output you can maintain, you know, over time, so that you know at what kind of rate you can ride, and then the goal is to increase that if you want to get stronger. And she said there is on this Swift app, there is a training section, and you can do this test. Well, I had a feeling this test was going to be pretty tough, which subsequently proved to be absolutely the case. You know, because part of it, I knew that part of it meant you would ride flat out, you know, at your maximum capacity for some of the time. And I'd left the time to do this till the afternoon, and I was feeling quite tired. I'd done quite a lot of stuff in the day. I'd done a couple of rides the day before. And I thought, oh, you know, maybe I'll just leave this till tomorrow. It's a bit daunting, and it was cold. I've got my turbo trainer on my bike set up on the patio. And here in southwest of France, it's actually been quite cool and grey. It's like this morning, and damp. And I thought, oh, you know, I really don't feel like doing this. And it doesn't matter, you know, I can do what I want when I want. And so instead of getting on the bike, I thought I'll make myself a cup of tea and sit down and have a cup of tea and sit on the patio. And then something happened, and that's the thing, there's something that happened. Something happened, I thought, so I'm going to do it. And I put the cup of tea down, and I got my cycling shoes on, and I got on the trainer, and I did it. Oh, it was unbelievably tough. I chose the very hilly route to do this test on, which I hadn't realised that was what would happen. And the trainer itself sets the level of difficulty on the ride, you know, so I'm not able to suddenly make it easy, for example, unless I stopped. So it was tough, as I'd expected. However, I did it. And when I finished, and since then I've been reflecting and thinking, what happened in that moment when I was going to sit on the patio and have a cup of tea, maybe a piece of cake, and I decided not to, and I decided to do what I'd originally planned to do, which was to do this test. Now, that's the kind of moment that I find it's worth modelling, and certainly worth modelling for me, because as I get the structure for that moment in time, then I have if you like, the program for avoiding procrastinating, avoiding putting off, avoiding something that I kind of at one level want to do, but I'm a bit fearful of doing. And so I have been unpacking that moment. Now, I can't just tell you, you know, if you said to somebody who did that, they might say, well, I just decided, you know, I was going to put it off for another day, so I just decided to get it, and I got up and got on the bike. But there was much more going on. There's much more going on in those moments. And I've been unpacking that moment to find out the structure of it. And so, for example, it started with me knowing I didn't feel quite okay sitting, drinking my cup of tea. You know, I felt, I suppose you might say it's guilt. You don't have to give names to these things. It's not always helpful. But it was like that, thinking, I had said to myself I was going to do this right. So I was aware of that not okay feeling, which wasn't strong. And part of that is being sensitive to self and acting on what you sense in yourself. And so I paid attention to that feeling. And then I pictured my friend. So it's a visual. I pictured my friend in South Africa who I'd told I was going to do this test and who has been supporting me and helping me. Zainab, her name. So Zainab, if you're watching this, thank you again. And I thought, you know, I'm letting her down if I don't do this, because she's set me up, told me how to do it. And it's like me refusing a gift to go, oh, I can't be bothered. So I had an image in my mind of her, and I had a voice in my head telling me, you know, that I would be letting her down. And then I pictured myself on the bike and imagining it being tough. I was imagining myself really kind of struggling there. And I thought, well, okay, that's not the end of the world. That's just feedback. And if it's really too tough, then I could stop. And it's within my control what I do on this trainer, totally. And so I could stop, I could do it another day if I really couldn't persist with it, if I didn't like it, for example. And so there are all these elements. So I'm drawing on beliefs that I hold, a particular belief, a couple of beliefs, you know, about my responsibility to other people, belief that there's no failure, only feedback. I was responding to, first of all, a feeling within myself, then creating an image of, first of all, how I didn't want it to be, how I didn't want my friend to react, and then how I did want her to react and what I wanted to be able to be saying to her. So I had a mixture of problem state, images, and dialogue, and switched that to desired state. So I don't have to give you all the details of that now. And that's a structure for me. What works for you can be quite different. And that's what's important about this, is that we're finding unique things for ourselves, not some standard formula that some, you know, some super motivator is telling you to do. I mean, things like that may work, but the beauty of this is that you have the resources to find your own program, find your own strategy. And so, you know, the test will be like, today is grey and damp and I am considering doing a ride. It's not got the same attachment to it as the kind of commitment I had to doing this test yesterday. Nevertheless, I now have some of the elements of the structure. So the point about modelling is that when you model a moment in time, rather than, oh, this big thing, I want to cycle, you know, motivation. That could be a very big term for what you could say was what I experienced yesterday. But, you know, it's like, well, you can't, it's just too big. However, that moment in time was a very particular example of that. It was a moment where, faced with something I was really getting ready to put off and avoid, but I switched and chose to do it. That's a moment in time that for me is very, very valuable to understand. And in that moment, I can track the thoughts. And the principle is that what we do, what I do at a micro level is true of what we do at a macro level. And we can study it at the micro level and then apply that to a bigger level in life. And it's quite interesting because having started to study that and get some of the details that I have, it's interesting that this morning I've got quite a few things that I'm getting on with that I have put off, and I hadn't consciously applied the strategy to these things. However, it's sort of already started to permeate other contexts in my life. So that's just a kind of glimpse into the world of modelling. You take a moment in time. Or come on to how you explore that if it's somebody else. This is what I'm explaining to you today, is modelling myself. And ultimately, that's what we're doing anyway. We are modelling ourselves. Sometimes we recognise the resources that we want or we think we don't have. We recognise them in other people. And in fact, modelling others is a way of releasing them in ourselves. The way you go about in finding out something about somebody else would be different, kind of, to how you go about finding it out within yourself. So it was a very rich moment, that instead of, me just doing the ride, doing the test, to have wanted to avoid it and start to avoid it and then not to. They're often key moments, those kinds of things. When you've been one state, then you go into another desirable state instead. It's like, what's happening in that moment? So you may want to, if you wish to apply this to yourself, think about what's a moment in time that you would benefit from studying. You would benefit from having a conscious awareness of the process that you went through or that you're going through to get from one state to another. And that would typically be from, a problem state to a desired state. It doesn't have to be from a problem state, but let's just take that as an example. What's a moment in time you think, wow, I did that then, I'm doing that. Something that you value in yourself, that you value. It's interesting though, sometimes people don't value those moments, think, well, I shouldn't have, delayed in the first place. But actually they are a real source of learning, when we move from one state to another. And the way we make decisions, how do we do that? That's what we answer with NLP. How did I do that? How do I do that? And then, of course, how will I do that? How will I keep applying that? So what's a moment for you when you think, whoa, yeah, I shifted there. How did I do that? Enjoy exploring. It's a great source of just very, very empowering learning.